Welcome to the public hearing presentation for the draft environmental impact statement for the Navajo Nation Integrated Weed Management Plan. This presentation is part of the public review period for the draft PEIS under NEPA. This presentation is given by the BIA Navajo Region's interdisciplinary team and is translated by Joe Holgate. Let's start with a brief message from the BIA Navajo Regional Director, Gregory Mahoja.
Ya'atahey. Hello, and welcome to today's public hearing for the draft environmental impact statement for the Navajo Nation Integrated Weed Management Plan. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn more about this project and your participation as a member of the public. This project represents an enormous effort by the BIA to provide practical and science-based solutions for noxious weed management on the Navajo Nation. Noxious weeds are non-native plants that invade and outcompete native vegetation. Weeds impact every habitat on the Navajo Nation and reduce the productivity of the land, harm wildlife, and damage roads, buildings, and structures. A strategic and focused approach to weed management can improve the BIA's coordination and planning for weed projects across the Navajo Nation. This effort would not have been possible without input and feedback from the Navajo Nation, our cooperating agencies, and members of the public. We thank you for coming and hope this presentation provides valuable information on the BIA's plans for addressing weeds in the region.
Today's meeting is part of the BIA's efforts to inform the public of its development of the Navajo Nation Integrated Weed Management Plan in compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA process. During this meeting, the BIA will provide an overview of the NEPA process, review the Integrated Weed Management Plan and draft PEIS, and receive your substantive comments on the project. Please note the BIA may not answer or respond to your questions or comments during today's meeting, but we will provide responses in a formal report after the public review period ends on December 13th. We will provide information at the end of this presentation on how to receive notifications when the report is available, along with other project updates.
The BIA is pursuing this project to address its responsibility under the Federal Noxious Weed Act, the Plant Protection Act of 2000, and the American Indian Agricultural Resource Management Act. The Federal Noxious Weed Act and the Plant Protection Act direct all federal agencies to manage and control noxious weeds. The plan was developed in compliance with the Bureau of Indian Affairs regulation and the Navajo Nation Code for Agriculture and Livestock Management. The draft PEIS was developed in compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act based on the Council of Environmental Quality Regulation. For this project, the draft PEIS used the old CEQ regulation as amended in 2005.
This presentation will discuss the following topics. What is NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act? What is a Programmatic Environmental Impact Statement? The project location, the purpose and need for weed management, the cooperating agencies involved, how the BIA has involved the public, issues identified during the public scoping, the alternatives proposed to address these issues, an overview of the resource analysis, the current project schedule, what is substantive comment, and finally, what will provide an opportunity to submit your comments and questions. What is NEPA? NEPA stands for the National Environmental Policy Act, which is a federal law passed in 1970 that applies to any action performed by a federal agency using federal funds or taking place on federal lands. NEPA requires public involvement in developing and in evaluating projects. This is done through public meetings like this one, working with other agencies and experts to gather information and data and allowing the public to review and provide input on the project. NEPA requires agency to consider the environmental impacts of an action on the human environment. This evaluation informs the decision-making process. Finally, NEPA requires the agency or organization implementing the project to disclose their analysis. This includes the data information, and relevant studies used in the analysis. Some confidential items may not be available, but the approach and methods used in the analysis should be explained. Today's meeting is part of the public involvement process under NEPA. It is an opportunity for you to learn about the project and provide your feedback. We want to hear your concerns and questions about what we are proposing.
What is a programmatic environmental impact statement? For this project, the BIA prepared a programmatic environmental impact statement to address NEPA. An environmental impact statement, or EIS, is required if a project significantly affects the quality of the human environment. A programmatic document is prepared when there is limited information on when, where, and how treatments may be implemented, as it provides a broad analysis of the project area. For this project, a PEIS was developed because the Navajo Nation Integrated Weed Management Plan provides a generalized approach to weed management, with limited information on where, when, and how treatments will be implemented across the region. This approach provides a broad analysis of weed treatments and their potential impacts, as well as evaluating the cumulative impacts of weed projects. Specific weed projects will tier off this document and require project-specific NEPA compliance documents like an environmental assessment, or EA, based on an analysis in this PEIS. This document also streamlines future NEPA compliance for weed projects.
The draft PEIS analyzes the potential environmental consequences of the Navajo Nation Integrated Weed Management Plan on the Navajo Trust lands and Navajo Indian allotments in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. These include areas managed by Chinle or Central Navajo Agency, Fort Defiance Agency, Eastern Navajo Agency, Shiprock or Northern Navajo Agency, Western Navajo Agency, and the Navajo Partition lands. While new land is not directly managed by the BIA does assist with natural resource management, including weed project. Therefore, it is included in this plan.
The purpose of the Integrated Weed Management Plan is to manage 45 noxious weed species on the Navajo Nations to improve ecological function by increasing native plant productivity and diversity, preventing further noxious weed spread, and enhancing wildlife habitat. The Navajo Nation Integrated Weed Management Plan will address this by focusing on 6 different management goals for the target weed species. For high priority species, the plan would prevent or eradicate populations. For medium priority species, the plan would contain and eradicating populations over time. Finally, the plan would locally contain and monitor low priority species.
A cooperating agency assists the BIA by informing the environmental analysis based on the agency's expertise and providing feedback on the lead agency's analysis. The cooperating agencies for this project include the Navajo Nation, the National Park Service, USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services, or APHIS, the Bureau of Land Management in New Mexico, the Arizona Department of Transportation, USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service in Arizona, the Utah Department of Transportation, Navajo Nation Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and the San Juan Soil and Water Conservation District. As part of its public engagement, the BIA conducted public scoping for the project in the spring of 2013. Originally, scoping was held over a 45-day period, closing on February 27, 2013. However, the scoping period was extended until March 20, 2013, after request from the public for more time. During public scoping, the BIA held 5 public meetings from February 5th to the 12th, and an additional 6 meetings from March 11th to the 15th in 2013. 129 people attended these meetings, and the BIA received 45 comments. To update public scoping for the current draft, the BIA opened an additional 30-day scoping period in May 2021, based on input from the Department of Interior Solicitor's Office. No meetings were held, and BIA received 6 comments during this additional scoping period.
During its scoping periods, the BIA received 51 comments. Most comments and concerns are addressed in the IWMP and draft PEIS. Only one relevant issue was raised, which led to the development of an additional alternative for the impact analyses. This issue concerned whether biological control agents would negatively impact endangered species and cause unforeseen ecological changes. Biological control agents may also affect similar native species, become invasive themselves, or adjust their range and spread to unforeseen areas. The no action alternative is required by Code of Federal Regulations 1502.8 and would continue BIA's planning and implementation of weed treatments. Currently, each weed project is planned separately, with separate environmental compliance and limited coordination with other agencies or nearby weed projects. This alternative would focus on treating 21 noxious weed species previously prioritized by the BIA in 2009. Mechanical and chemical treatments would be the most popular methods, with limited manual and cultural treatments, and no treatments with USDA-approved biological agents.
Alternative 2, the proposed action would implement the Navajo Nation Integrated Weed Management Plan. BIA would authorize new weed management up to 50,000 acres annually, with repeat visit over 10 years. The methods include manual, mechanical, biological, cultural, and chemical treatment. The plan would authorize the use of 33 USDA approved organisms and provide coverage for 21 US EPA approved herbicides. The plan would use a combination of methods to provide the best possible control for each species, while prioritizing projects based on the site condition, regional concern, and species impacts. The plan also includes priority weed management area, adaptive management to learn the most effective methods, and prevention, education, early detection, and rapid response method. Based on available funds, regular weed mapping and monitoring would inform future projects and prioritization needs. Finally, the plan established communication protocols to coordinate work with resident land users and other agencies.
Alternative 3, the no biological control alternative would exclude the use of biological control agents. This alternative would authorize up to 45,000 acres of treatment annually, reducing annual treatments by 5,000 acres compared to Alternative 2. Prevention, education, and early detection / rapid response methods are included, as well as the mitigation measures outlined under Alternative 2.
Alternative 2 includes mitigation measures to protect valuable resources on the Navajo Nation. In brief, these measures require coordination with local communities, federal and tribal agencies, and local area experts to ensure projects are planned safely and effectively. There are avoidance measures that prohibit retreatments near federal and tribally protected species and migratory birds, open water, cultural resources, fossils, and wells. The plan includes safety and best management practices, or BMPs, to protect workers and the general public, such as restrictions on when and where to apply herbicide and designated cleaning areas for equipment and vehicles. Finally, project planning requirements based on federal and tribal regulations are outlined to identify potential issues, concerns, and needs prior to implementation. Together, the mitigation measures reduce the potential impacts of weed treatments. These measures also apply to Alternative 3, except for those biological control agents.
Alternatives not analyzed. 2 alternatives were considered but dismissed from detailed analysis. The first alternative, known as Alternative 4, would exclude chemical treatments. This approach was suggested by the Navajo Nation Department of Fish and Wildlife, due to concerns about the BIA's heavy reliance on herbicides. However, excluding herbicides would cut the number of acres treated annually by half. While the BIA understands the concern with herbicides, chemical treatments can effectively treat weeds covering large areas, and some weeds are only controlled with herbicides. Additionally, projects that exclude chemical treatments may not receive funding from the BIA Noxious Weed Program, as non-chemical methods have limited long-term effectiveness. Ultimately, removing chemical methods from an integrated weed management approach would not meet the purpose and need of the project. The second alternative, not analyzed, would address weeds through grazing management. Grazing on the Navajo Nation has spread many weed species. However, comprehensive rangeland management would not adequately treat noxious weeds. In some instances, grazing deferment may cause established weeds to continue to grow and expand, especially in areas with high weed cover. Additionally, grazing management would only focus on rangelands and would not address weeds in other impacted areas, such as roads or rights-of-ways. Thus, a grazing management alternative would not meet the purpose and need of the project. Instead, the BIA and the Navajo Nation will address noxious weed concerns from grazing through the pending Agricultural Resource Management Plan.
The analysis indicate direct impacts to vegetation, soils, and wildlife, with secondary impacts to cultural, social, economic, and biological resources. These impacts, which include increased erosion, damage to existing native plants, and wildlife exposure to herbicide, would be short-lived before and after treatment and would dissipate over time. With long-term improvements to these resources, those impacts would be minimized or eliminated through the mitigation measures, best management practices, and improved project coordination. Overall, the project would benefit the socioeconomics of the Navajo Nation by improving land productivity, creating more natural resource jobs. It would also improve wildlife habitat and native vegetation by reducing weeds, stabilizing soils, and restoring native plants. All members of the public are encouraged to review the draft PEIS for more detailed information on the resource analysis and the potential impacts of each alternative.
This is the current project schedule for the draft PEIS. This project is currently in the public review period, which started on October 29 and will run through December 13th, 2021. Public hearings like this one will be held remotely for the Navajo Nation from November 15th to the 20th. The BIA will accept comments on the draft until December 13th, 2021. After comments are collected, the BIA will prepare the final draft Programmatic Environmental Impact Statement with the Record of Decision, or ROD, to be available in the summer of 2022.
We welcome all your substantive comments by December 13th, 2021. Please make sure your comments are submitted by then. A substantive comment includes those that present new information on the project or its alternatives, those that identify potential weaknesses in the analysis, or those that suggest reasonable alternatives for analysis. Comments that are not substantive include those that provide no data to support suggested changes, those that do not pertain to the project area, are vague and open-ended, or are value-type comments. For example, I do not like biological control, or I want to protect camel thorn. When preparing your comments, we appreciate comments that are specific on how to improve the document. Please try to reference the section, figure, or page number that applies to your comment. Also, comments that raise specific issues or provide evidence of how the issues relate to weeds and weed treatments are appreciated. Once the BIA has finished receiving comments, it will prepare a response. Similar issues will be grouped together when developing the response report. The report will also review BIA's proposed adjustments to the analysis for the final draft. A major component of this project is receiving feedback and suggestions from interested members of the community.
Ways to stay informed. To stay informed, You can reach out to us on social media or visit our project website for updates. You can also follow us on Facebook at Bureau Indian Affairs, or you can tweet us at Bureau Indian Affairs. You can also email us at nniwmp@bia.gov to include your name on our project distribution list. If you have questions or would like to discuss this project, you may call the BIA Navajo region at 505-863-8287. A link to the website is also available in the chat. The BIA will use these resources to inform the public of any changes or developments with the project, including when the response to comment report is available, when the final PEIS is released, and when the BIA issues its record of decision.
You may review the draft PEIS and the IWMP at the BIA's project website. The BIA will accept comments on these documents from October 29th to December 31st, 2021. You can submit comments via fax, email, or mail using the contact information shown on your screen. You may also submit any comments using the form on the website. When emailing your comments, please include, quote, comments on the NNIWMP PEIS in the subject line. Remember that any comments received on social media, such as Twitter or Facebook, will not be considered. Please also include your name and a return address on all written comments. Thank you, and ahiahe.